Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be looking at the current Mythic Plus meta in patch 11.05 and what is happening in the next patch, 0.7, in terms of the new rings, in terms of the lack of class changes, and basically what I would like to see. And let's go and get started. Now, unless you've been living under a rock or just a new player coming into World of Warcraft in terms of Mythic Plus, you're probably fully aware of what is perceived to be the meta comp right now in terms of the most popular classes. This is real player information, and basically there is a god comp when it comes to really high keys. Now keep in mind, we're looking at really high end keys. We're looking at, again, you can look at plus 19s, 18s and things like that. Don't get me wrong, these kind of compositions are not required in lower end and weekly keys. There's a bunch of players who are just doing weekly keys and they feel that they need this composition. And I actually feel that a lot of the specs, or at least like for example Discipline Priest, might not actually be the best healer when it comes to poke content because of the lack of utility that it has. It's the only healer in the game that doesn't have an interrupt. But right now you're basically looking at the domination of Discipline Priest and Prot Paladin. Now both of these go hand in hand and complement each other. Discipline Priest, or Priest, doesn't have an interrupt. Prot Paladin has additional interrupts because of things like Avenger Shield. On top of that, Prot Paladin also provides an unmatched amount of utility to the rest of the group. It can provide defenses where they need them. Having a Lightsmith Prot Paladin with Holy Portal Wire, it gives you an additional level of flexibility, and it can definitely be felt, especially as a healer when playing with Prot Paladin. So these two are basically complementing each other in a really nice way, and it's making Discipline Priest meta, in my honest opinion. Priest also has PI, and PI is absolutely insane when used on the best DPS right now, and that is Enhancement Shaman. So you have Prot Paladin, you have Discipline Priest, and you have Enhancement Shaman. These are pretty much a lock-in right now when it comes to really high-end content, because again, we talked about Prot Paladin and Discipline Priest complementing. We talked about the fact that Discipline Priest, or Priest, provides PI for Enhancement Shaman, who is absolutely blasting right now. And then besides that, you'll have another pure lock-in pick, and that's going to be Augmentation Evoker. And this is a hot button discussion because there's a lot of people who question the need for Augmentation Evoker to exist in this game. Now, Augmentation Evoker is going to provide a lot of utility, it's going to provide a lot of support, and most importantly, it's going to provide or buff your party, and it's going to increase your survivability, and that is extremely important, especially when you're looking at tanks. For example, let me know if you're a tank who's attempting to do a high key level of Grim Battle. Try to do that without Augmentation Evoker and let me know how it goes. Augmentation and the survivability that it provides is still extremely mandatory. Now, in terms of the overall damage contribution that it provides, it's not really going to be higher than having like 3 pure DPS specs, but it doesn't matter having more DPS when you can't survive some of these really high keys, and this is why Augmentation is still going to be a sure lock-in pick. I'm a fan of the fact that Blizzard is trying to experiment. They're trying to add, again, for example, support specs like Augmentation Evoker. When they first announced it, I was relatively excited. I wanted to see how are they going to experiment about this, how many different specs are they going to add, and again, it was kind of exciting. Now, given the fact that Blizzard has mentioned that they don't really have a lot of plans of introducing additional support specs, I am completely questioning the whole role by itself. What's the point of having support role where only one spec can fill that niche? It's like having a tank role and only one tank being available in that role. It feels a little bit weird, and I hope that Blizzard is going to address the support gap that exists in World of Warcraft. Guys, let me know how you feel about Augmentation Evoker and the balance that it creates, especially in Mythic Plus content. So we're talking about the god tier comp that exists in Mythic Plus content right now. We're talking about Protection Paladin, we're talking about Discipline Priest, again, complementing each other. Discipline Priest also provides PI, Discipline Priest also provides pain suppression for your tank if they're in dire need of it. We're talking about Enhancement Shaman being absolutely OP. It's also a great recipient for PI. We talked about Augmentation Evoker buffing the party, creating or adding additional survivability. And the last spot kind of goes to Frost DK. Now, the Frost DK spot is relatively open, and there are multiple different DPS specs that are kind of emerging, which I think is good, because the more choice that happens in these high-end Mythic Plus keys, I feel like it's going to trickle down to lower-end content, and people will feel like you can bring more DPS specs and things like that because it's important. So Frost DK is very, very popular, but there are multiple groups out there who are also running things like Balanced Druid, who are running things like Assassination Rogue. You have to remember, with Balanced Druid, you also gain Mark of the Wild, which is great for the party. Acid Rogue is kind of pumping right now. And you also probably see some groups with mages. And I also have to mention the rise of Red Paladin in the last couple of weeks. And I think it's really nice because Red Paladin is a relatively easy class to get into, which creates a little bit more accessibility for a lot of the players out there. You can see here, this is kind of the highest keys in the world, real player information. You can see the composition in terms of Prot Paladins, in terms of Discipline Priest. They're There are Mistweavers coming in here, which I think is the sleeper OP spec that I talked about, and you can see Augmentation Evokers, you can see Enhancement Shamans, you can see Frost Decays, and you can see certain groups also replacing those Frost Decays with Rogues, Balanced Druids, and things like that. There are some, how do I say, flexibility when it comes to the high-end Mythic Plus meta, but not a lot. So what is happening in patch 11.07? Not a lot of things are happening in 11.07 in terms of class changes. Now keep in mind, there is going to be a circlet, basically a ring where you can socket 3 different gems. If you played in Dragonflight, you're super familiar with this. This is basically a copy paste mechanic that they're bringing in the War Within, which I honestly think is extremely lazy and it's just something that keeps you playing. We'll talk about this a little, but in terms of the class changes, there are some racial changes in terms of making some of the races or racials feel a bit more impactful, because let's be honest, if you're running Mythic Plus content, Dwarf and Night Elf, the fact that Dwarf you can dispel these really annoying debuffs, with Night Elf you can shadow meld abilities away, those are still extremely impactful. So I'm not sure if these are going to make a dent, but we'll have to see. And outside of that, there isn't a whole lot of things happening in terms of class changes. I don't see anything shifting in terms of meta unless Blizzard is going to include more changes in the future, unless Blizzard is actually going to add, again, certain buffs to the underperforming classes and things like that. Right now, the only difference is this circlet. Now, what the heck is this circlet? You can see it right here. This is what it's going to look like. It's basically a ring with 3 different sockets, and those sockets are going to have different abilities. And the most important part here, it's going to start off at 619 item level, but you can upgrade it all the way to 639 in a series of weekly time-gated quests. So Blizzard is going to force you to play week in, week out in order to upgrade these, and let's hope that these are going to be worth upgrading. Again, we'll have to look at the balance. Historically speaking, the balance of these rings has been pretty atrocious. They're either underpowered or just way too OP, and then Blizzard ends up nerfing them halfway through. We'll have to see if the same thing is going to happen here, but the circlet, copy and paste ability from what was happening in Dragonflight. Now, if you're interested in seeing one of these gems and what do they do, you can see some of them are extremely passive in terms of giving you secondary stats. Some of them give you a chance to shield an ally with lightning, absorbing certain amount of damage. Some of them give you mastery, some of them give you extra damage, extra healing, and things like that. They're, again, very similar to what we saw in Dragonflight. So what is happening in patch 11.07 in terms of like meta changing abilities? Again, right now there's nothing really on PTO in terms of class changes. Mainly you're looking at the circlet, you're looking at the ring. Blizzard is trying to entice players who maybe quit the game to try out and come back to try and build up your ring. It's weekly, it's gated, so therefore you have to come back multiple weeks. We'll have to see the power of the rings right now, because again, the ring power right now means absolutely nothing, or the circlet power, because let's be honest, if they're underpowered, Blizzard is going to buff them. If they're overpowered, they're probably going to take some time to nerf them, and we'll see at the balance. But the patch is not overly exciting, at least not for me. I'm relatively disappointed about the lack of class changes that have been announced for patch 11.07, but there is still time. I still want Blizzard to keep on continuing with class tuning. I want a different, or how do I say, I want more classes to open up in that high-end Mythic Plus content. I want more healers to be available. I want more tanks to be viable or optimal in high-end. I want more DPS slots to open up. I'm not sure what to do with Augmentation Evoker right now, but let me know. And overall, let me know if you're excited about patch 11.07. Are you excited about the circlet? Are you excited about the new zone? Do you think you're going to be coming back to the patch if you're someone who left? Or do you think Season 1 of Mythic Plus and the War Within is cooked and you're just waiting for Season 2? Let me know, and I'll see you in my next video.